Today we have the Star Model B in 9mm Luger. Go ahead and take some shots and see how it does. So it's a really nice shooting gun. It's full-size frame, it's heavy metal, so the recoil is fairly mild. Shoots fairly accurately. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it. Welcome to Craig's Gun Channel. This week we're going to cover the Star Model A and B Series pistols. The Star Model A, using 9mm Largo ammunition, was developed in 1922 and utilized the same basic locking link system as on the Colt 1911. In fact, these pistols appeared very similar to the 1911, sharing not only the locking system, but nearly identical control layout and operation. However, the similarities are mostly cosmetic, and there's no parts interchangeability between the two designs. In 1924, some minor changes to the Model A were made, and they also added a 9mm Luger version to the line, creating the Model B. The similarities between the Star A and B and the 1911 were so great that in 1931, a few years after Colt updated the 1911 to the 1911A1, many of the same ergonomic changes made to the Colt were also adopted by Star on the A and B series pistols. Principally, the backstrap profile was changed, and the scalloping around the rear of the trigger was adopted. There was some resculpting of the thumb safety, and some slight internal changes that were mostly made for manufacturing purposes. This created the third generation for the Model A and the second for the Model B. These designs were produced up to the war, at which time small refinements were made to both versions for adopting into military service. The Model A branched into the model of 1940 for use by the Spanish military, and the Model B08 was developed for limited use by Germany. After World War II, the design was revamped to a more modern, linkless locking system, captive recoil spring, and a quick takedown lever version for commercial and military export sales. This created the Super A and Super B series, in 9mm Largo and 9mm Luger respectively. This version was produced from 1946 through to the end of the primary series AB production in the late 1980s. In 1956, retro versions of both the Model A and B, utilizing the traditional locking link and takedown from the pre-war versions, was produced. This created the Model AS and BS, which were produced concurrently with the Super A and B models until the end of their production. This example is a Model BS in 9mm Luger produced in 1986. Let's take a closer look. And as always the case, before working on any firearm, you need to make sure it is free and clear of any ammunition. First, we'll go ahead and remove the magazine. And as you can see, the magazine is empty. Go ahead and lock the slide back. And as we can see down in the chamber, it's empty as well. So we are free and clear. So we can go ahead and go over the controls and features of the Star Model BS. Of course, we have our magazine release, which we just utilized right there. You just push in on that to release the magazine. We have our trigger. It is a single action only trigger. Have our safety, and right now it is on fire. The red dot is showing. To put it on safe, you would lift up, and now that's on safe. That not only would lock the trigger from operating the hammer, it also locks the slide back by engaging into that recess in the slide. This is our slide lock or slide open to lock open the slide on the last round or manually. That also is the takedown pin. We have fixed front and rear sights. The rear can be drift adjustable. to adjust for windage. We have the plunger tube right there, which is what the recoil spring goes down under the barrel through here. And this is the barrel bushing right there. There again, very similar to a Colt 1911. Some differences. This rear, what would be the spring housing on a 1911, which could be removed, that is just cast as an integral part of the frame here. The trigger, instead of being a straight pullback trigger with a trigger bow that goes around the magazine well on both sides and operates the disconnector and everything in the back, it's not that style of a trigger. The trigger actually pivots on that pin right there. And so the actual fire control and operation is totally different than a 1911. The locking system is the same with the barrel link. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. But otherwise, it's basically functionally is not the same as a 1911. It just looks an awful lot like it. Clearly it was inspired by the 1911. That's pretty much it as far as the controls and features. As you can see, it's not ambidextrous in any fashion, except, of course, the trigger being ambidextrous. So basically, that's it. So let's go and see about disassembly. First thing we'll do is go ahead. And let's go ahead and begin disassembly. First, remove the magazine. Go ahead and lock the hammer back. It's not really required, but it does aid in disassembly. That way you're not working against the hammer spring as well. That little cutout notch in the slide, I want to align it with the corresponding tab on the takedown lever. And once you line that up from the other side, you would push up on the takedown pin there. So line that up. You can push up. Now, generally, a lot of times it's easier to go ahead and leave the pin in, just disengage it. At this point, you need to remove the recoil spring and plunger. So there's the plunger cap right there. And then that's the barrel bushing, which also serves to hold the plunger cap, so it all kind of locks itself in together. So you'd push down on that plunger cap, and that would allow you to then rotate the bushing. You can remove the cap and spring. At this point, you can go ahead and remove the takedown disassembly, and it should slide apart. This would be the spring guide. The bushing itself, you can go ahead and rotate the other direction. It only goes about that far, and then it can lift out. And the barrel, make sure that the link is down. So you don't want it to be up like that. Go ahead and go down so it's as low as possible. And then you can lift up slightly to unlock it from the slide. Actually does lock in there pretty good. And then you can just slide the barrel out to remove the barrel. So we'll take a look at the lower frame first. You'd basically want to clean off everything here. You got the feed ramp. Of course, you have the hammer. There's our ejector right there. So you want to clean everything off, clean the rails, clean all the gunk and crud that builds up in there. Light coating of oil. You don't really want to disassemble this any further. For this one, to disassemble it further, you pretty much have to be driving out pins and things like that. Unless it needs repair, you shouldn't do anything else to it. Basically, if you damage any of the components in there, it would render the firearm either inoperable or unsafe. Of course, clean all the individual parts, clean the spring, the plunger tube, clean everything off. The barrel itself, you want to clean both the outside and the inside. There's a little bit of a feed ramp there on the barrel. You'd want to go ahead and clean all that off. Light coating of oil for operation and corrosion prevention. On the slide itself, you'd want to clean everything out, clean the rails, light coating of oil there again for lubrication and rust prevention. There's the locking recesses for the locking lugs that they lock into the lugs on the barrel there. You have our ejector. This is an external extractor, rather, not ejector. This is really as far as you want to disassemble this. To remove this one, unlike the Colt 1911, this is another departure. Of course, there again, the extractor is an external one. But to remove anything, you'd be driving pins. You'd have to remove that pin to remove the extractor. You'd have to remove the pin right there that goes through under the sight to remove the firing pin. So it doesn't come apart as easily as a 1911 does. So this is as far as you would really ever want to disassemble this, unless there's a breakage of a part or something in there. You can clean everything and get to everything good enough in there. If some crud does get into the firing pin channel, not very likely, but you could basically just wash it out with oil, just kind of flood it out. So that's pretty much it as far as the disassembly and cleaning. So for reassembly, first you'd want to remove your locking lug. There again, there's the link. Move it to the bottom so that that'll slide in easily. It goes all the way to the back. Then you could lift it up, because ultimately that needs to be in that position there to reassemble the firearm. The guide rod, you go ahead and put that in. And of course the little hemisphere shape goes against the barrel. And put it in that position there. You can go ahead and put the bushing on if you want, and then put it over into that position there. That way it holds it in place. And that's really just so that everything's in alignment, so it makes it easier to put together. So then you have the rails there, and the grooves in the slide, the rails on the frame. You'd slide those together. And at this point, you want to line it up to where you can see that link through there and get it to where it's all lined up. And then put your pin in. Of course, help if I go on the right side here, looking at it upside down. Go ahead and put the pin in. And if you want, you can go ahead and slide that all the way into position and lock that in place. Then slide the slide forward. Then you have to hold the slide, put the spring in, put the plunger tube over the spring, push it down, then move the bushing over. And at this point you'd want to be careful, because if the bushing slides this way while your thumb isn't holding that down, it'll launch it across the room pretty good. Parts are pretty good size, so you're not going to really lose it, but you might have to look for it a little bit. But go ahead and push that down so the bushing will go over it. That'll lock it in place. Do a function check. As I said, this does have a magazine safety on the trigger, so you have to put a magazine in it to try it out. And we're back assembled.
The similarities of the Star A and B models to the Colt 1911 have allowed it to stand in for the big bore 45 on the silver screen. They're more readily able to be converted to operate with blank cartridges for filming and cosmetically fill the 45's shoes, so you've seen a lot more of them than you might think over the years. Also, one final note, while the Star models A and B are denoted by which cartridge they use, 9mm Largo or 9mm Luger, it's not uncommon to find a Model A that's manufactured or converted to 9mm Luger, or a Model B that uses 9mm Largo. While a barrel that uses 9mm Luger will not be able to chamber a Largo round due to its longer length, the opposite is not true. A 9mm Largo pistol can chamber a 9mm Luger round. The cartridge will not be headspaced correctly, and the Luger round, while shorter, is actually a higher pressure round. This would create a dangerous situation. Also, while the 9mm Largo round has similar dimensions to 38 Super or the 9x23 Winchester cartridge, those rounds are also more powerful than the Largo round that the pistol was designed for. Care must be taken to ensure using the correct ammunition for your particular pistol. I hope that this information is of value, and if you liked the video, I would ask that you hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notify bell if you want to continue to see more like this. And I value your comments and feedback, and as always, until next week, stay safe.